Good afternoon YouTube, Warbles on a lot here with a platypus's perspective regarding redneck pollution problems. Once upon a time, in 1994, I had to go and rent a sheep farmer's house. And the particular sheep farmer's house that I was renting was on a block of land which extended all the way down to the Upper Man River. So I was entitled, and nobody could complain when I used to launch a two-person blow-up vinyl dinghy onto the Upper Man River. And I used to go cruising, and I had a lot of fun cruising the Upper Man River with the New England Tableland Inland Cruising Yacht Squadron. I say squadron because Canada John joined me on one trip and we went downriver and we camped on an island and came back. However, today I want to talk about a conversation I had with a platypus. Now, when I first met the platypus, he was prepared to come in to within, say, 5 metres of where I was in the blow-up boat. But baby platypus stayed further away, and Mrs. Platypus came in a bit closer. However, shortly after I met him, Mr. Platypus asked me to follow him upriver because he had a bit of a problem. On the way, we met Mr. Spur-Winged plover, as well as a wood duck. There was in fact an entire family gathering of wood ducks, but because of their prior experience of people, as I approached, the wood ducks all flew away. They'd heard about people. A superb blue wren came out for a quick look at the unusual sight, and a water dragon lent his support for the mission and even agreed to hold still for a second photograph. Further along, this particular bloke was so convinced of his own camouflage that he really doesn't believe anybody can see his back legs at all against the rock, because he's been line bred to live there for thousands of years. And being honest about it, he's not far wrong actually. It's very, very hard to see his back legs against the rock, which makes him slightly overconfident. Unless he's a telepathic water dragon. Maybe he could read my mind and he knew I was harmless. The platypus led me to a pair of wood ducks, one of whom ran away overland, while the other one paddled away on the water, in the shade, and then into the sunlight. Under the willow trees, which are in fact a noxious feral pest, we met a couple of kingfishers. This shows how not to photograph kingfishers. This also shows how not to photograph kingfishers. What you're supposed to do is wait for the correct moment and capture the moment when both the kingfishers are looking in the same direction. It makes for much better photographic composition, I find. Finally, the platypus came to the core of his problem. Here we can see the platypus showing me his nest entrance, and here is a floating plastic bottle. This was the platypus's bone of contention. 20 yards further upstream, we have garbage bags floating in the reeds. And I began to realise what the platypus was upset about. Some of my neighbours had nasty habits. As we approached the rear entrance of a farmhouse, and paddled around the corner, you can ignore these little white flecks. They're caused by the photographic emulsion coming unglued in condensation. But this here is the first glimpse I had of what I call the garbage waterfall on the upper Man River in late 1995. When I drew level with it, this is what I beheld. There are buckets and toasters, even an old kitchen sink, I think, maybe it's a television. Instead of driving to town and taking their rubbish to the dump, this stock, standard, normal, respectable sheep farmer about the place, small cropper, minor cattle baron, was just chucking it in the river. And the platypus didn't like it. And I didn't like it either. So I took these photographs. I didn't quite know what to do about it until my daughter, who was 5 at the time, had a conversation on the school bus with the 5-year-old who lived at the house that owned the garbage waterfall. The kid went home in the afternoon to ask his parents about why they did it, because, as my daughter said, there are people who live on that river downstream who drink the water out of that river. And the next morning, on the school bus, the little boy's answer was, "Yeah, but my parents say they're only hippies, so it doesn't matter if they have to drink our garbage." So I reviewed my conversation with all the other species who lived on the river that was being polluted, and I took the still pictures and the negatives and sent that bloke 3 different government departments for Christmas. And I was really good friends with the platypus right up until I left that location and stopped taking boat rides on the upper Man River. Sadly to say, the local shire rang the bloke up and said, "We don't want to see this, it had better be gone when we get there." And several weeks after I took these photographs, there were some particularly heavy rains and some local flooding, and the flooding came up to about this level here, and there was nothing remaining below the level of the blue bucket after the flood, but the blue bucket stayed there hanging on by its wire handle to a tree root or something, and very little of this stuff above here. And my conjecture is that somebody stood at the top of the bank with a fire hose and a pump, and they hosed the garbage into the flood, because it wasn't there 3 months later when I went back to have another look. But that's the story of a platypus's perspective regarding redneck pollution problems. And you can understand now why I'm a bit of a serious extreme green extremist and activist, paying rates on the endangered species sanctuary for the privilege of using trespassing sheep for archery practice, because the animals need somewhere to hang out and hide in among the profit-driven people in farmerland.